Take your laurels, Caesar and Homer. Nay, I am no poet nor prince. I am known and own a style and state of my own, because I do not feign truth. For I portray ARTINO, censor of the proud world, and nuncio and prophet of truth. Here virtue wears a countenance of good cheer. Mark what the hand of Titian has unfurled. But if vice you adore, vice you should fear. Shut your eyes and shun my face forevermore. For though I be painted, I speak, I hear. Federico Gonzaga I adore, and Signor Giovanni yet I revere. But beyond these I honor no man more. Instincts awoke. Then his eyes fell on the conclusion of Ghiberti's letter. In his own, he had alluded very tactfully and even sympathetically to the attempt on Aretino's life in Rome. The wording was consummate. While I believed that what you did against him was not done without good cause, yet I always hoped that your kindness and humanity would lead you to do what you have now done. But even the refined vagueness of that reference seemed a blunder in the light of Ghiberti's reply. There is a phrase in your letter which I cannot let pass, the bishop wrote, without begging you to rest assured that whatever was done against him was done without my command, my consent, or my knowledge. On the contrary, I was so shocked that, had I not been dissuaded by infinite requests, I would have made a much greater demonstration than I did. The Marquis hastened to apologize for seeming to misjudge him, but on second thought he decided that he had not misjudged him after all. Ghiberti had merely learned, like himself, that if the man could not be murdered, there was no alternative but to humor him, and consoled by that thought, he forgave the bishop his snub. With the poet, however, the Marquis became extremely guarded. He no longer alluded to his family epic. He no longer alluded to anything. At 30, Federico Gonzaga was worn out with dissipation and almost a valetudinarian, and like an invalid he began to care more for his comfort than his glory. He resigned himself to oblivion and found that, after all, it was perfectly comfortable. The poet, finding his patron unwilling or unable to promote his reconciliation with Rome, also lost interest in Marfisa and began to cast about for other protectors. In Venice, he lacked influence, but he whistled and set to work. One thing he had learned, that to arrive anywhere, it was necessary to begin not at the bottom, but at the top. He began with the Doge. The Doge was pious, and to win his eye, the chameleon creature once more changed color. He had always advertised his contempt for the clergy, and it was repugnant to play the hypocrite, at least in public. But there was one priest in Venice whom he sincerely respected and who stood high in the favor of the Doge. Pietro Vergerio was one of a little band of Catholic reformers who hoped to stem the Lutheran menace by a judicious reform of the clergy. With these aims, Aretino found it possible to sympathize, and he cultivated the reformer in private. But Aretino could conceal nothing, and Titian blinked at the change which came over his crony. Was this the man he had painted? Something was amiss. It was not his veracity, it was not his virtuosity, but his voluptuousness. He seemed to be ashamed of it. He had lost or mislaid his good cheer. Aretino blamed everything on his debts. He could not obtain credit. He expected to die on a bridge. Titian cocked his eye and surveyed the soul of matter. Why was he starving himself? What did he expect to gain? The flesh and the soul were indissoluble. He deceived no one but himself by such austerity. Aretino shut his eyes and sighed. Even Titian misunderstood him. But he persevered. Pietro Vergerio was soon satisfied with his progress and recommended him to the Doge, and the Doge consented to intercede for him with the Pope on condition that Aretino delete all abuse of His Holiness from his writings and that he confess, communicate, and mend his life. The poet solemnly took the pledge. In January 1530, the formal reconciliation of the Emperor and the Pope was solemnly celebrated in Bologna. It was an historic occasion. The dove of peace hovered, a bedraggled bird, over the peninsula. In the Duomo of Bologna, which had witnessed so many such scenes, Clement VII placed the Iron Crown on the head of Charles V. The Emperor knelt, rose, and restored the Pope to his temporal dominions, and as the pontiff went through the feeble motions of a nominal sovereignty, Italy lapsed into a servitude which was to last from the Renaissance to the Risorgimento. It was a peace of exhaustion, and it was fittingly celebrated. The Pope was worn out by ill health, humiliation, and the terrible experience of the sack. Nothing remained but his magnanimity, and when, amid the general dispensation of honors and indulgences, a petition in behalf of Pietro Aretino was presented to him in the name of the Doge, he relented. He had lost his long memory in the sack. He forgot everything connected with it, but there was only one way to forget Aretino. Accordingly, the pontifical victim of the Pax Romana bestowed on the penitent poet of the Pax Vobis his benediction and order of knighthood, the coveted brief for the Marfisa, and a promise of more substantial gifts to follow, and the emperor followed suit with an imperial knighthood and the privilegio. Little pride as he had left, Clement still prided himself on not misplacing his bounties, and he was deeply relieved, therefore, by the letter in which Aretino now acknowledged value received. Your majordomo, the Bishop of Vassone, he wrote, handed me the brief here in the palace of the Queen of Cyprus, and repeated what he was commanded to say, i.e., that you were not so amazed at rising to the papacy from the rank of a mere knight of Rhodes, or at being, Your majordomo, the Bishop of Vassone, he wrote, handed me the brief here in the palace of the Queen of Cyprus, and repeated that he was commanded to say, i.e., that you were not so amazed as at rising to the papacy from the rank of a mere knight of Rhodes, or at being imprisoned when you were pope, as you were by my flaying your good name, particularly as I knew why you did not punish a certain person for attempting my life. Holy Father, in everything that I have ever written or done, my tongue has always been true to my heart, and in attacking your honor, I have always protested that I was not to blame for taunting you. If those who have attained the summits of power and honor through you insulted you with spears, what wonder that I taunted you with tittle-tattle? Two things I repent, and am ashamed of. I repent, having censured a pope whose glory was always dearer to me than life, and I am ashamed that in censuring him I did so in the depths of his afflictions. Now I thank God that he has relieved your soul of the bitterness of offense and mine of the sweetness of revenge. And in future I shall be your good servant, as I was in the days when my virtue, fostered by your praise, fought for you against Rome when Leo vacated the see, and I will so conduct myself that the Serenissimo Gritti, whose perfect modesty has mediated between your patience and my rage, will have occasion to reward rather than punish me. Aretino was as good as his word. In Lent, the Mantuan ambassador met him in church, with tears in his eyes and his confession in hand. In the dim light, the poet had difficulty in reading it, but he studied it devoutly, and when he raised his eyes, they were harrowing, and when he spoke, his voice was husky. The ambassador was so amazed at the change that he immediately reported to the Marquis. It was the event of the day in Venice. He told me that he knew God would not forsake him, and that he would do him more good than he deserved, having been a great sinner, and that he had put an end to the life he was leading, being absolutely resolved to renounce his rancors and hatreds and the rest of his wicked ways, and that he was thoroughly contrite, and that he would confess and communicate with his whole household, which he had not done for many years. On learning of this reform, the Marquis also was relieved. He looked forward now to a little peace himself, and did not begrudge the poet his divine patron. No more was said on either side of the Marfisa. It remained in pawn. Aretino was too busy living the poem of the pure in heart to remember his epic. It had served its purpose. It had brought him a contrite heart and a sincere conviction of the vanity of human glory, including his own, and his one concern now was to redeem his soul. It was still in pawn. He did not haggle with heaven. He spent Lent communicating, confessing, dieting, mumbling, and mortifying himself, and when he appeared once more in public, the Doge congratulated himself on having won a soul and rendered a public service to the city. On a memorable afternoon in April 1530, in the hall of the Grand Council in the Ducal Palace, Aretino publicly presented his soul to the Doge and the assembled Senate, and acknowledged his debt to the city which had redeemed him. The gorgeous hall, fretted with gold, transfigured with frescoes, filled with ambrosial sun, and the flickering shimmer of the lagoon, resounded to a grandiose harangue, which the poet pronounced it with the sonorous serenity and the grandiose avowal of a man reading his naturalization papers in paradise. I, who in the liberty of this great state have learned at last to be free, repudiate courts forever, and here build the everlasting tabernacle of my advancing years, for here there is no place for betrayal. Here the cruelty of harlots cannot rule, nor the insolence of Ganymedes. Here a favor cannot prevail over right. Here there is neither theft, nor violence, nor murder. And therefore, he concluded his inaugural apostrophe, I, who have terrified the wicked and protected the good, give myself to you, who are the fathers of your people, the brothers of your servants, the children of truth and friends of virtue, the comrades of strangers, the pillars of religion, the custodians of faith, the ministers of justice, the heirs of charity, and the subjects of clemency. Then, with a sweeping and synonymous movement of fluent obeisance, he turned to the Doge. Illustrious Prince, he declared, illustrious Prince, gather my love in the lap of your compassion, that I may praise the nurse of all other cities, and the mother elected of God to glorify the world, to moderate manners, and to give humanity to men, and to humble the proud, pardoning the erring. Such, he declared with a gesture which filled the room with vast rhetorical fresco, such is its privilege to usher in peace and to end wars. And then his vision broadened and his pacific inspiration raised the roof. Therefore, the angels lead their dances and assemble their choirs and spin their wheels of light over the field of air above it. extending the ordinances of its laws and the length of its life beyond the terms prescribed by nature. O universal fatherland, O common liberty, O station of the scattered, how much greater were the woes of Italy were your goodness less. Here is the refuge of her peoples, the security of her riches, the safeguard of her honor, the embraces. Here is the refuge of her peoples, the security of her riches, the safeguard of her honor. She embraces her when others abuse her. She supports her when others abase her. She welcomes her when others expel her, and feeds her when others starve her, and cheering her in her tribulations, sustains her in love and charity. And associating himself with the celestial city and identifying himself with its destiny, he stood inhaling its sovereign independence and exhaling his own triumphant emancipation. Be more, O Rome, for here there are none who could or would tyrannize over liberty. That douchebag.
He worked it, man. He really worked it.
He really worked at it.
Tell me something. In the language that's there, is that modern language or is that early?
That's early 20th century, late 19th century English.
That's
It's practically Shavian. When was this book written? Oh, translated?
30s?
In the 30s?
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's
So
yeah.
he integrated the new language,
The new language.
translating the old language.
Yeah.
Putting different words in there that has
Yeah.
finally come into existence, these new words. I noticed it. There's a lot of new words in there that simply doesn't go back to that age because there's no association to those words.
Well,
to
like
that
what?
age.
For example.
Some of them symbolic words, that addresses some other issue. How those words are used to address other issues or name other situations.
That may be possible because when you translate something, of course you use the language of your time. And not the language of the time. If you're translating an Italian piece from the Renaissance, you're translating it now in the 21st century, you use 21st century English, not Renaissance English, because it would sound stupid if you used Renaissance English.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you translated ARTINO and made it sound like Chaucer or Spencer, more like Spencer than Chaucer, it would be like, so why are you doing this? It's not comprehensible, it doesn't make sense and stuff. But if you put it in modern...
So it's lagging
in
terms of conversation.
Plus,
there's more thought applied to the thought
right.
rather than outward speaking about what you want to say.
Yeah. Plus, there's the fact that... Is that Jack Kennedy?
No.
Who is that? That's got the shape of his head.
Could be.
Yeah, could be.
That was a moment way back when.
Oh.
Not moment, but Metropolitan Museum.
Oh, right.
It was about 19...
Well, you can say it's Kennedy.
Yeah. President Kennedy. Just before he got murdered.
Yeah.
He was thinking about going down to Texas.
All right.
He looked at...
Should have stayed at the museum. The other thing about translating is that Spencer, when he was writing in 1580 or something like that, that was natural. That language was natural to him, and it would be unnatural to me now. So, if I'm going to and this language of Artino's language, it's florid, but it's natural to Artino, and it's natural to those times.
Mm-hmm.
So if I try to translate it, into anything but modern language, I wouldn't be being natural. And you have to make a compromise. Sometimes you have to use the old words. But
so how far do you get away from how he was feeling in terms of the words that's used to express.
Well, I haven't read the Italian, but it seems pretty good to me. This seems like a pretty decent translation.
And what do you think about this type of information? How was that information?
I fucking love this book, man. This is just great. I've come to the end of, I'm at chapter 66 now. So I think.
So the information that's in there, how do you think this guy came about that information? On this level here.
Well, two possibilities.
It's like verbatim kind of, he's like sitting there watching.
Well, he must have
his foot on the floor.
Yeah. Well, two possibilities. One, for things like the letters and the wording of the pardon from the Pope and stuff like that, those things must actually exist, and he must have gone to the library and copied them down.
Okay.
The stuff like the foot tapping on the floor,
Yeah.
that's novel writing. He's making that up.
Just to give it color.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of color applied to the story.
Yeah. All that stuff of he's tapping his foot on the floor and he doesn't hear the lapping of the water, because he's so immersed in the poem.
Mm-hmm.
That's, standard kind of novelistic bullshit.
And the early pieces that you read, the conversation between Queen Isabella, for instance, and the negotiation that was going on.
Yeah.
Then Columbus comes in and say, I have a new thing I want to do.
Yeah.
How close to fact do you think that is?
I have no idea.
In other words, there seemed to be a scribe
I have no idea.
somewhere in this story here that just taking down everything.
Well, not everything, but I'm not a scholar, so I don't know, but there must be contemporary accounts. Either a letter that Queen Isabella wrote herself, or there was an ambassador in the room too, and he wrote about it, or something like that. And some of those things must survive. So you'll have certain details will be incontrovertible. For example, the fact that Artino got fat when he got to Venice and started getting money. Well, you can take that fact and you can embroider it. And frequently that's what scholars do.
Mm.
And they get very, very, very upset when you call them on it. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in grad school, I got this job reading, because I could read in all kinds of different languages. And there was this professor emeritus who taught one class there. And he was a professor of literature, and he knew every language, every European language that ever existed, I think. He wanted me to read stuff to him in medieval French, medieval Italian, classic Latin, classic Greek, medieval Latin, medieval German, and so forth, and modern, and all the modern ones, modern Italian, modern French, modern German. And I could do all that even when I didn't know what the words meant, because I'm really good at pronouncing things and having, so I got the job reading to this guy. And I was reading along once in this medieval German poem, an epic poem called Parsifal, which is the basis for Wagner's opera. We came across this phrase, it was half of a line, that said, and Christ's birth was prophesied by Plato and the Sibyl. And I read along, whatever the line was, vorgesprochen von Plato und der Sibylle. And I was reading along a couple lines further on, and Weigon said, whoa, wait, go back. Read me those lines again. I read them to him again. He said, when was the date that this poem was written? Well, 1213. When was the first appearance of Plato in Western Europe? 1240 something? So how did Wolfram get hold of Plato in 1213? I don't know. Well, said Weigand, let's find out. So he sent me, he was nearly blind, that's why I was reading to him. So he sent me to the library, and we ordered books from other libraries. It was before computers and the internet, of course, and so we did all this research, running back and forth. I came down to New York and went to the public library because they had a bigger collection. We couldn't find a thing. We could not find a thing that there was any evidence that Plato existed in Europe before 1240 something. So finally, Weigand said, look, we're not making any progress this way. Here, well, let's do what we should have done in the first place. Let's ask someone. And so I said, well, who are we going to ask? He said, well, let's ask Gregory Vlastos. I said, Gregory Vlastos? He was my philosophy professor at Princeton. So he said, great, write him a letter, ask him. So we wrote him a letter and told him that we were working together. And he said, and he wrote back and said, that's splendid. I'm so happy you're working together. And yada, yada, yada. He says, and I don't know the answer to your question. But, he said, I'll tell you where I'd start looking. Check the lives of the saints. And at a guess, try the story of Catherine of Alexandria. Because the lives of the saints were popular literature, and they were copied out in many, by hand a lot, and priests, itinerant priests, would get their hands on a copy of this and use the stories in their sermons. So Weigand goes, that's it, we're on the track. And we went and we got a copy of the Lives of the Saints. We looked at Catherine of Alexandria, and lo and behold, it's a story of how this Egyptian princess becomes a Christian, and she is subjected to all kinds of tortures, and she won't give up her Christianity. And then she says, send me your Mr. Pharaoh, send me your best scholars, your 50 greatest scholars, and I will defeat them with the help of Jesus Christ. So he sends his 50 best scholars up, and she lays them down. She's just a better debater than any of them is, and one of the arguments she uses is that Plato and the Sibyl prophesied Christ's birth. And there it was. So Weigand says, write it up, Chris. So we wrote it up in a short little piece, and just a one-page piece, and sent it into Modern Language Notes, which published it. And you should have seen the shitstorm that came down. All these scholars had made up, there's the first thing that we found when we started looking, was that there were all these theories about, Wolfram was a secret heretic Albigensian. He actually, there were 2 years in his life that are unaccounted for, he traveled to Turkey. And shit like that. All this stuff. And they had found all these ingenious ways of explaining that thing, because of course we weren't the first ones that noticed. And they were they saw their academic reputations going down the tube, because they had made these really stupid speculations, and Weigand made this perfectly commonsensical thing. And shit. Boy, were they pissed off.
Sounds like, the whole thing that ARTINO got involved in.
Sounds like the whole thing with ARTINO. Sounds like the whole thing with
he kind of like, in a way, gave the model.
Yeah, it sounds like the whole
by
thing.
The information that he got now. That's all that discounted, how he got to play where he was. He simply wasn't just idling around. He had to be digging for information. Yeah. He was that kind of person.
Yeah. Well, it's this kind of backstabbing stuff thing.
It's just making adjustments to comfort, man.
The lower the
Get
stakes.
that in place, and then you can move up a little bit higher, right?
Yeah, the lower the stakes, the nastier people are about it. It's really amazing. It's truly amazing.
That's what I find so interesting about this kind of material.
Yeah, it is.
It touches on who we are today. So
it does.
It gives us, a little bit more, like, okay, it's all right.
You know what those
you went
for?
there, you went and did that, yeah, okay, it was wrong, totally wrong, but what else you gonna do?
Right.
You ran off, you need to eat.
You can't murder him. You can't destroy his reputation. You might as well humor him. Send him the fucking shirt. Oh, it's just like that guy that you were having me read from the Voice, all those columns.
Yeah, same thing.
What's his name?
A.D. Coleman.
A.D. Coleman, yeah. Yep, it's just like that too.
Oh, an incident happened last week. Let me tell you about this incident. Interesting. They fixing up a place next door, right?
Yeah.
Guitar guy. So he brings his contractor in, he gets a big buck, redo the store thing, right? So I park my car there all the time. Everybody knows that too. So he decides that he don't want me to park my car there. So he parks his truck there, right? So I'm looking at him and say, okay, sweeper comes, he don't even move the truck, right? So we gotta go around, right? So I said, okay, that's fine, well and good. Okay, you got this one. Right? And then the other time he moves and blocks me so I can't get back in again, right? So I swoop around and boom, like he's like looking, he's like, can't back. I said, I'm here, man. You gotta pull out and come back around again. I'm not gonna move, right? So I guess then the other time he stays there with the sweeper goes around, everybody's watching, right? So I park further down there. I said, fuck it, man. Then I'm sitting in the car. I said, fuck, man. I turn the car on. The car's still fresh. So it puts out a lot of gas. So the fumes are like ridiculous, right? So without knowing, I was fuming him, right? So he gets out his van and goes into the store and keeps on working, right? Forget. Next thing you know, I see the traffic ticket person walking up the street, right? I go, oh. I forget, I thought he was in the truck, right? But he had left. So she does this thing and he rushes out. He said, I was in the car. He said, I was in my car. He said, no, you just come from outside, inside there. After all these people, I was in the car. I said, this fucking guy here. Then, a couple of days later, I guess he mashed the button on me, right?
He did what?
Mashed the button on me.
What's mash the button?
He's into construction, and he knows people within the housing inspection people. Right? Wheeling deals, he's on that level, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess he asked for a favor. He have to use one of his favors. He got to get even with me now, right? So ask this guy to come and inspect the place, right? All of a sudden, this black dude shows up, official little thing here, we got a little thing here, and he said, your lights there is illegal lights. I have well, I ain't going out there with that.
Yeah.
So it's illegal. So I said, okay, I remove that. He said, the thing in the window there, that's illegal too. I said, I'll move that shit. And I figured that was all over and done with, right?
Uh-huh.
So today, coming back up the street there, I see the maintenance guy standing outside my papers. I said, what the fuck's going on now, right? So he said, you have to remove these lights, you got a summons for the building. So what? That fucking bastard.
What is it? Was the motherfucker Italian?
No, the new people who's on in the scene now, they're mostly Ukrainian, Polish. The new contractors, outside people, got their own little close network system.
You know how you can tell when a Polac's been using your computer?
How's that?
When there's whiteout on the screen. Stop this racist shit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That was fun. I gotta see what you do with this shit one day.
What do you look like, huh?
Yeah, that's what you
Ain't that something? He's living well too, huh?
Yeah, he's living well. Nice black velvet coat with a gold lining.
Real hustler, huh?
Yeah, no shit, man. No shit, Sherlock. A real hustler. He ain't dicking around with the little petty pimp stuff. No, he's going for the big guy. You gotta start at the top. Remember that. You want to arrive anywhere, you gotta start at the top.
He worked it, huh?
He worked it.
He was doing a speech, how grateful he is, huh?
Oh, man.